Welcome back to our program, Hollywood Structured. As some of you already know, our program is designed to have the young people who wish to enter the entertainment field, may it be music, nightclub work, theater, television, or film. It is also designed to help the parents and the educators of those young people, to help them understand their wants, their needs, and the pitfalls and the traps they may fall into unless thoroughly acquainted with the inner workings of Hollywood. Today, as our special guest, we have someone who started wanting out to be a ballerina. One of her first roles, however, was that of a little boy. She is now, however, a person who has done over 30 movies of the week, who has been in 4 series, is now leaving for New York to do a play. Her name is Linda Purl. Hello,
Hi,
Linda.
Lilyan.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Before Linda shares her expertise, and you will see what I mean, and her experiences with us, I would like to speak to you today about theater. More particularly about what is called equity waiver theater. Now, equity, for those of you who do not know, is the theatrical union where the stage actor are supposed to belong to. And if you get a job as a theatrical actor, you will get the salary that the union prescribes or that your agent, if you're lucky enough, can negotiate upward. However, because many of the Hollywood actors started in the theater, many of them want to go back to the theater. But it's very difficult when you're in a series or in a movies to take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months out of your life to go and be on the stage again. So what has happened in Hollywood is that many small theater have sprung up, and it allows actors who are, let's say, very well-known dramatic actors to do a comedy, or very well-known comedian to do a drama. It also allows unknown or beginners to be in a play, to be seen, to be reviewed, maybe to get an agent, or maybe to get your agent to have more confidence in you and get you jobs. Now, equity waiver is something, is a medium in which you are not getting paid, or very little, I think, $5 for your gasoline or $5 for the evening or something like that. But it allows you to be on the stage again, to feel the reaction of the audience, and of course to have instant gratification with the applause, which in film or television you don't have, except maybe 6 months later. Now, the quantity of theater in Hollywood is something that you have to deal with. Some of them are excellent. Some of them are repertory company and are excellent. They get reviewed all the time and they get seen by casting directors all the time. Some theaters are middle of the road and get reviewed half of the time, and the casting directors go there half of the time. Some others are very poor, and some others are what I would put in the category of scam. By that I mean, if you go for an audition and they ask you to pay $50 or $100 to be in their production, don't do it. That's a scam. Stay away from those people. Especially because you probably will end up having 2 lines which will not help you at all later on. Well, I think we should ask Linda, who is going back to the stage, about her experiences. Linda, where were you born?
I was born in Connecticut, born in Greenwich, Connecticut.
But you only spent 2 years of your life there, did you? And then what happened?
Well, my dad was in business with Union Carbide, and he was asked to go to Japan, so we went there, and I grew up there. My childhood years were spent in Tokyo, which was a wonderful, wonderful experience for me.
How many years did you live there?
There for about 15 years altogether. And you had mentioned that I wanted to become a ballerina, which is the truth. I really did, but I have a terrible turnout, and there was really no training for a dancer in Japan. So second best was drama. And there was really nobody else in Japan at that time, or even to date, who spoke the language, who was interested in drama. So if ever a role came up for a Caucasian kid that spoke the language, I got the part. And so it was a lovely beginning for me. I was in a very protected atmosphere. I got to work, but there was really no competition, there was no pressure, there was never any sort of grand scheme of career in mind. It was just work for the pure joy of work.
And you spoke Japanese, and you still do, speak absolutely fluently.
Well, I do, but I'd have no excuse not to, because I learned Japanese and English at the same time.
Oh, that's right.
So it was very easy.
3 years old at the time.
Yeah, it was very easy to learn.
Now, I understand you told me earlier that you taught English in Japan at the age of 7?
I did. It's a bit more...
Please explain to the audience what you did.
It's a bit more grand than it sounds. English at the time, and I guess still is, was a very popular language to learn, and there was a series running on the educational channel there, NHK, called Let's Speak English, and there was a professor who would sort of explain all the grammatical side of English, which to this day I don't understand, and he would sort of give me a nudge, and I, being the little blondie, would then say the various phrases with the proper American accent. So I was there really as a gimmick, and the idea being that if this little brat could speak English, so can you. So, but it was a good experience for me to do. I did that for 7 years, and it was just something, we did it on the weekends. I'd go in and spend all day in the studio Saturday, and it was fun to do.
Do they really want to speak English?
If you were to go to Japan today, you'd have no problem getting around. People, they do speak a smattering of English. You can really get by there quite comfortably.
Have you gone back?
I have. I have gone back. I went back a couple of years ago. My parents left Japan about 6 years ago, so that was sort of difficult. I no longer had a home to go to, but I have lots of friends there, and of course wonderful memories. And every once in a while I very much feel the urge to get back to my roots, as it were.
Now, you're in Japan, and what do? You stay there for how many years?
Well, I was there until I was 16 or so.
And then what happened?
And then I went to England to study drama. I studied privately with a woman who had taught at RADA, who has since retired. And we were very fortunate. Through Japan, a lot of companies would come, and the Royal Shakespeare Company came through. And as there was a fairly small foreign community, we became friends with some members of the Royal Shakespeare Company, and they were the ones that introduced me to Marguerite Beale. 2 of the actors in the company had studied with her at RADA, and so they put me in contact with her, and it was like going to a slave labor camp. It was very tough. It was just Marguerite and myself.
Can you explain the difference between the training that you got in Japan
Yes.
and the training that you got in England and then in New York?
Well, the training in Japan, first of all, was in Japanese, and I had diction, I had dance, and some drama. Now, the drama that I had in Japan was really the Japanese take on American drama. I couldn't study Japanese drama because it's all men. Kabuki, no, it's all men. It's not an area that women enter into. So modern drama was really the only thing that was available to me in my studies. So I'm not sure how, I mean, in a way, I don't know how helpful it was at the time. It's more amusing than anything else to look back on now. The one thing that the Japanese had was tremendous discipline. They do in every aspect of their culture, and theater, which is a very disciplined world to begin with, is no exception. Just tremendous physical discipline. I came away with a fraction of what they would have liked, but nonetheless, it was a wonderful example that I have to look to. Then in England, the language was the main thing. I'd never really acted in English before. We were working primarily with Shakespeare, and so that was good, just to become familiar with my own language in a dramatic sense.
May I ask you something? Did you, since you were 2 years old when you learned Japanese and you never were in the United States, did you have a foreign accent?
No, I really didn't, Liliana. I don't think I did. No, because my parents, we spoke English at the house, and for the most part my schooling was in English.
The reason I ask is because my father was American, but I was born, raised, and educated in Paris until the age of 21.
Right.
And I still, to this day, have an accent, and I forget, I apologize for the people over there, I forget
Well,
to
it's
put
such a beautiful accent.
S's at the end of plural verbs, or plural words. So that's why I was asking.
No, I don't think I...
How long did you study in England?
I studied there for 9 months.
And then what happened?
Well, I came over to the States and thought I should, continue my studies here. I'm a firm believer in taking classes, certainly periodically. So I went into the neighborhood playhouse. That only lasted for about 6 months, and I bombed out of there. I was very confused by what I was learning. I think it was too young. I was in the middle of culture shock. It was just, there was too much, too soon, too fast. And I went straight to the into the Strasberg Institute. I had a mental block for a second.
Actor Studio.
Actor Studio. Actually, I wasn't a member of the Actor Studio. It was just the Strasberg Institute, and I studied there for 2 years. And so that was the antithesis of what I had been studying in Japan and in England. It was not at all working in broad strokes from the outside in. It was very much from the inside out, drawing from your own experiences. It was the opposite of everything that I had learned.
So would you say that you have a well-formed education about
Well,
from every
well-formed, I
point of
think,
view?
is very kind. I would say confused is probably a better description of
I would like to
my
go back for
studies.
1 second to the fact that you were talking earlier about the fact that kabuki is only for men, but you played the part of a boy in The King and I.
Yeah, I did. Well, those lines are somewhat blurred in drama in Japan. There's a all-female acting company called Takarazuka, and they do a lot of musicals, and Fiddler on the Roof, and Hello Dolly, and Mame, and with all-female casts. So, I mean, the nice thing about it is that just because you're a woman doesn't necessarily mean that you're limited to women's roles. You can, and particularly so for children. So I had studied at this company, the Toho company. They had an academy and a film studio and a theater as well. And so when they came time for them to do The King and I, they thought, may as well hire the Caucasian kid to do the Caucasian role. Never mind that it's a boy and she's a girl, that'll do fine.
You look adorable, by the way, in those pictures.
Thank you.
Okay, now you're in New York. Do you find a job in New York? Do you find an agent? You worked on a soap, did you not?
I did work on a soap. I did Secret Storm for a year. I was also going to college at the time, and I had, through a circuitous route, it was through my contacts in Japan, I ended up auditioning for a Western in Mexico that William Morris was handling. They handled
A movie?
They handled all the actors in it. I guess it was some sort of a package deal. So I ended up getting the film and signed with William Morris at the same time. So there was my agency for 10 or 12 years. I was with them. I was very fortunate, I think, to get an agent, and a good agent, be with a good agency anyway, right from the start. It was sort of I didn't realize that it was really just handed to me, and that people have to work sometimes very hard to get.
Now, did you do any
agent.
stage in New York? while you
I
were in the
did. I
soap?
did a couple of plays, in basements of churches and whatnot. But it all seemed like fun. It was very romantic for me, and the more cockroaches and the more rats and whatnot, the better, and the colder, the better. And but I was fortunate to be doing the soap that gave me an allowance to live on in New York.
And also, I think, which I think is important for the young people, you told me that you were really learning on the job.
Very much so. It's one thing I think, to study in a classroom, and it's another to learn on the job. I think that's true particularly for film, because there's so many technical aspects that I think are hard to come by in a classroom. There's first the process of you studying the script and then you studying what you can bring to that story, you atoning with your character. And then you turn up on a film set or a television set and you have to hit specific places for the camera. You have to do the same business take after take, there, which can really throw you if you're not acclimated to that sort of thing. And the best way to get those skills, I think, is on the job. At least it was for me.
So now you are in you're in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and you're on the soap. What brings you to California?
Well, the soap ended. The soap lasted for 17 years, and I was on the 17th year. So suddenly I was free. I was on my summer break from college, and nothing was really happening for me in New York, and I thought, may as well come out to California and take a look. And I ended up working on Happy Days for the second season. I did a semi-regular on that show for the second season. And
how foreign was Hollywood to you, considering New York, England,
very,
and Japan?
very, very, except that I had an agent, and I also had a manager. So my manager and his wife and myself all sort of came out together, and that made a tremendous difference to me. I didn't know how to drive, had to get over that in short order. But it was all an adventure, and it was enormous fun. Everything was possible.
Now, did you work a lot when you first arrived, or was it difficult?
Well, the advantage I had was that I was 18 when I came out, and I looked younger. So if there was a
You
role...
still look 18, let me tell you.
Thanks, Lilyan. If there was a role for a 16-year-old, they would sooner hire an 18-year-old to play the part of a 16-year-old, because at 18 you're legal and all sorts of things, and it's much less expensive. You don't have to have a school teacher on the set. So I was very fortunate. I got to work a lot playing sort of teen crisis of the week. We did teenage hooker, I did teenage suicide, I did you name it. All sort of the perils of adolescence. I got to do various movies of the week dealing with those topics. So that's how I began out here.
Now, is there a dry spell for you, there is for every actor, but is there a dry spell for you? What happened at those times?
Well, I used to think that it would become easier to deal with those times. In fact, they become more difficult. I think the more time you spend in your craft, the more you either, I mean, the love affair with it either becomes less or more intense. For me, it's become more intense. So the times then that I spend away from it are difficult. On the other hand, I guess with acting, as is the case with any art, unless you have experiences in life to draw from, what can you do? You have nothing to give. So those times of when you're not working, I think, are essential to your craft and to your to your art.
Could you explain to the young people out there who see only the glamour of Hollywood? They don't always see the amount of work which is put in by they go for the end result, they don't go for the process of experiencing. Could you tell them what your schedule is in the series that you're doing now, for example?
Doing a series called Undercover, and the week runs something like this. We'll start Monday morning at 6, which means that I get up at 4:30 or 5, go to the studio in the dark, get to work for at least a 14-hour day. A 16 or an 18-hour day is also probable. So at that point you finish at whatever, 8 or 10 o'clock. You then have a 12-hour turnaround, which means that you leave work and 12 hours later you're back in the makeup chair. So the following morning you're back to work at 8 or 10 o'clock, so already your clock is thrown off just slightly. You then have a 12, 14, 16, or 18-hour workday. So besides long hours, and then you have a 12-hour turnaround, so that you can see by the end of the week your clock is completely turned upside down. You end up coming to work at noon on Friday, and we would be working until 2:30, sometimes 5:30 Saturday morning. This was normal. Monday morning, you're back to the 6 a.m. start. So just to repeat, in addition to the long hours, there was also sort of a jet lag type factor to be dealing with. However, when you're doing what you love, it feeds you in a way that nothing else can. So although there was a kind of physical fatigue, it was a wonderful way of feeling spent. You felt that you were spent in your chosen field. You get home, I mean, getting home is ridiculous. You sort of wave to the children who are long since in bed. You pet the dogs who sort of look at you as though you used to live here. You stand in the refrigerator and eat your dinner. You learn your lines, at least take a glance at them if you can keep your eyes open. Scrape the makeup off your face and get in bed. And hope that you wake up when the alarm clock goes off in the morning. There's no social life at all.
So where's the glamour?
I don't know, Lilyan. The glamour is, I don't know if it's glamour. Glamour was never really something that drew me to it, but I can tell you where the joy is. The joy is in the work. The joy is in doing a scene with your fellow actor. I got to do a scene with you, Lilyan, and I mean, I felt that we sort of clicked right away, and it was such fun. I mean, here we are, absolute strangers to one another, and yet there was a communication. And this is what's so exciting about drama. It's like standing in front of a painting, and you and somebody else see the same thing. You receive the same idea from that painting, that same idea of anger or of love or of beauty. It's the communication between spirits, be they friends or strangers. That's a glamour. That's the joy.
Now let's go to New York.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be doing a play. How long will you be there?
We're going for 3 months to New Haven to do a play in Long Wharf. This is a play. It's called The Baby Dance. It's something that Stephanie Zimbalist and myself started 2 years ago. It was a project a long time in the making. She and I had met, as you do, just sort of in passing, liked each other tremendously, wanted to work together. We both have a penchant for the theater, and we approached the Pasadena Playhouse. They, in turn, put us in touch with a wonderful playwright. Stephanie and I each had an idea for the play, and we thought these would be 2 separate plays. Or one idea would be used and the other wouldn't, more likely. The playwright said, oh no, this is one play, and she wove it into a play dealing with adoption and class struggle. The wealthy family can't have children, the poor family can. So they each have what the other desires most deeply.
Is Stephanie going to be with you in the play too?
Yeah. So we co-produced the play last winter here, and then we took it to the Williamstown Theater Festival in Massachusetts this summer, and now once again we're going back to Long Wharf for 3 months, and we'll see from there. The only reason I give this long story is that this was a project that, I mean, we got very lucky, touch wood, but we made it happen. How can I say this without patting myself on the back too hard?
Pat yourself on the back, it's fine.
We gave birth in a way to this project and we had wonderful people along the way. Without the Pasadena Playhouse, without our wonderful playwright, of course, there would be nothing, and without the rest of our extraordinary cast. But the project took a great deal of patience and some perseverance. And it's something that we did not sort of sit back and wait for the industry to come to us. We ventured forward, and we're very lucky.
Well, you made your own luck, actually, right?
It takes both. It takes both because, as you know, I mean, there are any number of times too you really try to get something off the ground and it doesn't happen. And I guess the moral, if there is any moral with this, is not to be discouraged, to keep trying. Maybe not on that project, but to let that go and try with another project.
Now, if the play is well received, then what? Will it go to Broadway?
It's not a Broadway play. It is an off-Broadway. It could be an off-Broadway play, I should say. So we'll see. We have our New York producers lined up, but they have said that it is entirely dependent upon what the New York Times says. So, which then, it makes me realize once again that we really just have to go in and do the work for its own sake and for our own enjoyment and for our own lessons. And if people want to take us forward from there, wonderful. And if not, we will have had to do the chance. We would have had the chance to do the play again, and that'll be that.
It is the 3-minute marker. This is a time in which you address the young people, or the parents, or the educators. So, you're on.
Well, boy, where to begin? A couple of times some young people have come to me, as they do to any performer, and ask what they should do. And my first response is, if there's anything else in your life that you feel you can do, do that. It's a ridiculous industry. It's filled with rejection and disappointment, but that's part of the creative process. It has very little to offer you except if you love it, if you love to act, then you must do it. But I reiterate, only do it if you feel you must. I also feel very strongly about staying with the theater for at least for the beginning, and then forevermore through your career. It is the actor's medium. You're not at the mercy of editors or directors. It is the pure communication between you, your fellow actors, and the audience. And the audience will teach you more than any book or any class could, I think. You learn about yourself. Let's see. What else, Lilyan? Was there something else that that you thought?
No. You said that your parents encouraged you, and and I think we should say that.
Right.
However, I have to wrap up right now.
Okay.
I would like to thank Linda for sharing her experiences and her expertise with us. Maybe she'll teach me Japanese.
Teach me French.
And remember, you people out there, please keep watching us, because we keep watching out for you. Be well. Thank you. Till next time.